And this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and beer.
Years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode here at Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. I'm excited for this episode, mostly because I voluntold my old academy partner. We used to teach in the academy at my old agency together, my old coworker and my good friend, Caity, is going to come on today, and she is going to talk about her experience as a dispatcher and her hopes for the future. Hey, Caity, how are ya?
Good. Just, posted to the gram that I'm about to be internet famous.
Oh, did you tag me?
I did tag the Raspy Dispatcher. It was your little intro, and I was like, hey, Mom, look.
Look at all that support, love. Appreciate you. Like we used to work together. We used to be, I don't know what we call it, co-teachers,
Co-visionaries.
Co-visionaries, yeah. We
saw the future.
Yeah. We taught some post-class, taught some geography for our department. And yeah, I'd have to say that you are one of the most committed dispatchers I have ever met. And I don't know if I've ever told you that. I'm just going to tell you now on this live recording. So genuinely, like you're someone who just like wants to do things well, wants to be involved, wants to like help where you can help. And I think we need that in this world of dispatching and first responders and whatnot.
I mean, I could say it's the anxiety within me that pushes me to do that, but I think it's just, it's the coworkers, the people, the wanting to be the difference, be the change.
How did you get into public safety? What is your story?
Okay, so my stories started off when I was a wee babe in my mother's eye. I was a twinkle. My dad's a fireman. He's in a big agency in California. And I was 25 or 26, realizing, oh my God, I'm still bartending, which nothing wrong with that. But like, I have a fear of like, I'm going to get old and die one day. What am I going to do? And so I started like looking for anything. I was like trying office jobs, and I was like, okay, this is cool, I guess. Like I can show up 9 to 5 every day and say like, hello, thank you for calling. And that stuff. Tried being an orthodontic assistant. Disgusting. Children with braces there are things growing in there.
Oh.
And they're like, oh, just clean it out. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I need a fuller face mask. I need a bodysuit. I can smell last week's cheese sandwich.
Oh, that's not good.
And so I was 25 or 26 and spiraling. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I physically can't bartend forever because like, I don't see a future for myself in that. And I wasn't someone who grew up and was like, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a policeman. I want to be a dispatcher. I didn't know dispatchers were a thing. And my dad said, you know what? You're a little bit of a control freak. I said,
I can see that.
Yeah, a little bit. And he goes, why don't you get into dispatch? And I said, like truckers? Like toot, toot, 10-4? And he's like, no, like police, fire. And I was like, what's that about? And he explained his side of the knowledge, being a firefighter, limited. And I was like, firefighters, silly people. Explained his idea of, what dispatchers do, and was like, check out, your local government website, see what they're doing. And I was like, okay. And getting the Criticall appointment was super fast because I was just like, yeah, I'm interested. And they're like, show up for this test. And I was like, okay. I hate tests. hate them. I've never been a good test taker. So knowing that I was suddenly being asked to take a test and not knowing what the heck it was, I then started freaking out and I was like, I'm not going to do this. Not going to do it. I don't test well, never tested well. That's why I didn't go to college. That's why I didn't finish college. I did like a couple semesters.
Yeah.
I was going to be a history major because I wanted to be Indiana Jones. That was the one time where I thought maybe I had a
the major that's needed for Indiana Jones as a career.
So I was like, okay, it's Criticall tests. Ooh. And my dad's like, oh, they have these online tests. And I was like, online tests, okay. He sends me a link. It was like, oh, for $30, you can do all the online practice tests you want for it. Thank God I did that. I had not touched a computer in like 5 years. Like other than like my phone screen to order something. I hadn't had a full keyboard in front of me. My initial typing score was like 8 words per minute. And they're like, guarantee, you need a guarantee you can type this fast. I'm like, oh, like that's like 15 times below what I should be at.
That's hilarious.
So for like the next 2 weeks, I was like sitting there, just like, the dog jumped over, the quick brown fox jumped over the log.
I think that is the sentence they use. I think that sounds.
It's something about a fox and a log. So next couple weeks, I'm sitting there. I'm doing it repeatedly. And I'm like, okay, this is great. I take the test. They're like, you passed. I'm like, yay. This must mean I got the job. Nope. I hear nothing for like 6 months. I thought I like had passed the test, but like still wasn't chosen. And so I went from like telling my boss like, hey man, like I'm going for a real job one day. You better start looking for a new bar manager, to like being like, hey, I hope you didn't look for a bar manager because I'm probably going to be here forever. And out of the blue, they start, hey, can you come in for this? Can you come in for that? Note, always bring backup interview shoes, especially if you're female and you're wearing heels. One of my interviews on my way in, or it was either the way to my car or something, I broke a heel. Okay. Now, I did have a second pair of heels in my car. They were my going out heels.
Oh, well, that one number. Yeah.
They were platform stilettos. And I was wearing a like interview dress with like a blazer. And then these thick platform stilettos. Like I'm talking like
dying.
And I was like,
wear heels. They're dangerous and unreliable.
They're great for ma'am, if someone tried to carjack me, I could take one of those off them, club them.
No, you try to hit them with it, it's going to break, is what it sounds like.
You take the hefty part. You hit with the hefty part. Showed up and so I showed up in like these stilettos. My boss still won't let me live it down. She's like, oh, so what kind of heels you wearing today? I'm like,
that's great.
In my defense, it was show up in those or be barefoot.
Oh my gosh. Did you tell them like, hey, I broke my heels on the way in, or you just owned it? You just owned it. Owned
it. It didn't get brought up till I was in the academy and Beth brought it up.
Oh my gosh. That's
and I was like,
the one to bring it up.
See, what had happened was a shoe broke. And it was like, be on time, be late. I didn't have a second pair of interview shoes. That wasn't something I had. I was like, maybe I'll throw like some kicks on, come in there in some Adidas.
Oh my God. In my Adidas.
I didn't have time to glue my heel back on.
They
were ready for the next interview. It was fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you can put into the interview and just be like, dispatchers, we have to be able to turn on the dime and figure it out and, roll with the punches. And you demonstrated that.
Yeah. And so after like months and months of, interviews where like they completely humbled me because they're like, oh, why'd you have so many fix-it tickets as a 20-year-old? And I was like, oh, I was really bad at like figuring out like that you can't pay those in cash and that you like actually have to have them signed off. And like, admitting every mistake I've ever made as an adult. Most humbling experience ever, especially if you're like me. And adulting did not come easy. So it was a humbling experience in a lot of interviews. But once that was done, it was, ta-da, welcome to the academy, where you think you are going to be ready for it because you made all your flashcards ahead of time. Nope. You should have known the flashcards because it's test time day 1.
They give you a test day 1?
I think it was day 2.
Oh my gosh.
But still, I thought
day 1.
I thought making the 200 cards, I was ahead of the game. I was prepared. No, I wasn't prepared. And I'd forgotten how to like learn. So like I was like sitting there and I'm like flashcard. And I'm like, why is nothing sticking? That was not my learning style. So that was a whole other story. But that's how I got to dispatch.
So so like I've said in the last couple of interviews, is like folks either like know somebody who's in like a first responder field and they get pulled into it, or they just literally like stumble into it, some way, shape, or form. So did your dad ever say anything like, why didn't you go try to be a fire dispatcher, since that's the family job, or hating on the PD side of things? There's a little beef between firefighters and police,
So where he is, fire and PD have a different relationship than like my local fire and PD. They're not staging for the same, having police stage for the same things. And his agency, their dispatchers do police and fire.
Okay.
So like for all he knew, that's what we did. And now like he's one of those like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like I don't have to worry about her. Let's not mess with this. Like she got her retirement. I can be safe now.
Ain't that the truth?
One child that I crossed it off the list. That kid's done.
Did you ever have an urge to go into like the medical side of dispatching? Because I do not. I have no urge to go into the medical side of dispatching.
So somewhat. Between tactical dispatching, where we went out with SWAT, and a couple of calls where I've had the victim of a shooting on the phone, and our fire dispatchers are just as understaffed as police dispatchers. So there are nights where, this one in particular, I could not get through to fire. I can't give medical advice. Oh my gosh. It was really hard. Because like I have basic knowledge, read as like, Girl Scout first aid, Grey's Anatomy.
Definitely Grey's, definitely.
I know like if it's bleeding from the thigh and it's not stopping with pressure, like maybe get a tourniquet. But I can't say any of that. And it's really hard when you have someone who's asking you to help them. And you keep getting a recording of, hey, you've reached the fire department, stay on the line, don't hang up. And you're sitting there and you're like, I'm still trying to get you through. Like they're started no matter what, they're coming to you. I just can't give you instructions to help you.
Yeah.
And so it made me, I actually asked my boss and was like, hey, if I took a class that was approved by Post for medical, could I then, if this happened again, give medical advice? I can't, because our I guess the way ours works, it would not cover me if something went wrong.
Exactly. The liability is so great. I mean, we even have had like lateral dispatchers come in who were at an agency where they did medical, and they, being trained in it, can't give it either, because you're giving you're giving this advice on behalf of the department you're working for. So you have to follow the policies and procedures that are within the department, because if you go outside of them, you won't be protected.
Yeah.
And
I have to admit, if I told them to put a tourniquet, I can't tell you if a tourniquet could cause you to lose your leg. I don't know what happens if it gets put on wrong. And I will freely admit it. So that's why, like, part of me was like, tell him put on a tourniquet. And I'm like, I can't do it. I was like, I mean, have you guys ever seen, a medical show where there's this kind of, I'm like trying to push them towards like apply pressure, apply.
Yeah.
Have you ever, has any of you ever taken a first aid class?
Yeah.
Have you seen, what to do?
Yeah. And it's using your words, wisely, such as, do what you think is best. What do you think? Do what's going to keep you safe. Like, that's something I would always use at my old agency. It's like, do whatever you think is going to keep you safe, because if I tell you to run into a bedroom and lock the door, then that person climbs through the window and you can't get out because the door's locked, it can all come back as a liability on the person giving you that direction. So it's not like the movies, folks. And like a lot of the, dispatch movies that you're watching, it's, we don't have all the answers as the folks who are answering 911.
We don't have a blueprint of your house that's
We
like,
do not have
if
a
you
blueprint
take
of
this
your house.
air duct, it's going to lead you to the second floor.
Yeah,
you that's the second floor. There's some stairs.
We do not have that luxury. So sometimes it feels, for dispatchers, I would say, and like that's call you're talking about where you're transferring and you can't get through because other calls are happening, is it can feel a little helpless for the dispatcher, and I mean, if we unpack it even further, this is why we need to utilize 911 for life and death emergencies only. So if you're calling 911 and I'm now having to transfer you on 911, or we're taking up time, you're blocking a line. So if I'm transferring that shooting call to fire, and fire's dealing with a non-emergency, and they're trying to triage that and get them off the line, my caller's getting blocked, right? So my caller can't get through because fire's busy in general, and then they're busy with non-emergencies that are utilizing the services. Wrong.
And it's hard because with how understaffed that's a wide statement. How understaffed many agencies are. Mm-hmm. You'll get people who are like, oh, I called non-emergency and didn't answer, so I called 911. It's like,
yeah,
we didn't answer because we're prioritizing all, life or death emergencies. Do you have one? And they say, no, but I have a question. Okay, I have my own ring for life or death emergencies. Do you have one? No, I have a question. And you're like, I'm trying to guide you.
Yeah, I mean, I've had folks call, and it's only me and this other person in the room, which is vastly different from our original experience together, right? And
I mean,
right,
no yelling 15 people.
But one person's on radio, one person answering the phones. We have a priority event happening, and I'm throwing folks on hold because I'm trying to help my partner, right? Yeah. So, do you have a life or death? Call it on the non-emergency line. Do you have a life or death emergency, or can you hold? I can hold. Do you have a life or death emergency, or can you hold? And they're like, well, I'm like, it's a yes or no. Do you have a life or death emergency, or can you hold? Hold, because there's and sometimes I'll hang up and call right back. Hello, same person, still same question. Do you have a life or death emergency, or can you hold?
And it's funny because we have, we even see those who are experiencing homelessness. They have smartphones now. Mm-hmm. It's not a luxury to have a smartphone anymore. Mm-hmm. It's everyone has a type of it. Some have Wi-Fi, some have data. That's where it differs. But the amount of people who have so much knowledge at their fingertips that they can do something like Google the non-emergency number.
Let me Google that for you. Hold on with me.
It's upsetting to see how many people don't do that, and they'd rather sit there and argue about like, well, why can't you just tell me? I can't tell you because I've got someone on the other line who's being stabbed.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you because like we just had, a vehicle hit a bunch of people, and I got to keep answering 911 to try and get like a plate from someone who saw it.
Yeah, or we're working multiple shootings and a DV all happen at the same time across the city. It's just we definitely want to encourage citizens to utilize the services and understand we want to answer your question and get you off the phone just as much as you want your question to be answered. Like, we don't want to spend all that time talking to you because you never know when another emergency is going to drop. And if we're throwing you on hold, if we're saying this is not a life or death emergency, utilize this number, so on and so forth, it's valid. There's a reason for it. If the dispatcher is being a little short, it's because there's other things going on outside of this phone call.
And it's hard because we get some people, I called, 20 minutes ago, and it's about a car they don't recognize on their street, but no one's in it. Yeah. Or a vehicle blocked the driveway. Things that aren't necessitating an immediate response in our eyes, but in their eyes feel like it could.
Yeah, it's
it's annoying. It's scary. You don't know who this person is that's parked there. And it's hard because they'll keep calling on 911 even after you've told them, hey, my officers have to get to the stabbings, the shootings, the kids that are being hurt before they can get to this type of thing. Mm-hmm. And the amount of angst and ire that we get back. I got called the best string of curse words the other day. It was a mixture. What was it? It was a mixture of British curse terms and there was some slang in there. I had to look up some of these words because I had no idea what some of it meant. And I was awesome. I wish I had written the exact way he strung them together down. Because if I ever got into just a really when I'm 80 and I'm allowed to be I would have wanted to use that. It was good.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Well, speaking of fire, you said before we got on here that you had a funny fire call that you wanted to share. So I'm bringing it up. What's this fire call?
So I got a call from the fire department because a gentleman had a water gun on him, self-admittedly. And I had to explain what a water gun was.
Wait, the little squirt gun? Oh, so they wanted us to stage. They wanted to stage and have us go clear the scene.
Yeah. For a and mind you, there's, Orbeez guns now too. So I explained, it could be from this to this. Because there's different ends of it now because, kids' toys ever changing. Mm-hmm. I was could be, child's toy just choo choo choo, little spurts of water. Or it could be little gel balls of water. More often than not, child's toys. Can it cause damage? Sure, but so can, throwing a pillow. Yeah. If you do it the right velocity, anything can cause damage. And so it was a really interesting thing to have to explain that. I was sitting there what is the correct term for me to use? And how do I say this without sounding like I'm talking down or purposely being rude?
Yeah.
Because it was 3 a.m. I'm tired. They're tired. It's towards the end of a graveyard shift. Everyone's, you've put in your 12 hours already, probably. Mm-hmm. You're exhausted. And so I'm sitting there and I'm trying to compute through my slow brain. What do you mean? What is this?
So they literally called up hey, what is a water gun?
Well, they asked us to stage, and I was for water gun? Yes. You know what that is, right? No. Oh, okay. So, children's toy?
Yeah.
Children's toys, shoots a little bit of water.
Yeah.
Joked about it with my friends for we're still laughing about it.
But did we end up staging? Did we end up going?
Well,
I feel that's one of those, I'm going to have my superior call your superior.
The hard part was we had already gone.
Oh.
And that's where we get into how things can sometimes be weird between agencies.
Oh my God, that's funny. That's hilarious.
We didn't go back out though.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember any of your first early calls for service? Were you a poo magnet?
So my first day with answering phones. Now I'm still in the academy.
Uh-huh.
I'm not supposed to be doing my own thing yet, but I'm kind of a go-getter. I'm sitting next to my trainer. She's
Control
this
freak.
bright, bubbly, spirited person. And she's like, do you want to try answering your own calls? And I was like, heck to the yeah. First call is a noise complaint. And I'm like, sweet, easy. Second call is a noise complaint. Sweet, easy. Third call, I think my husband shot himself.
So what'd you do? Did you?
Why do you think he shot himself? Like, I mean, I didn't know. Like, I didn't even ask the adder check. So I was like,
But here's also for the
why are we thinking this?
Yeah, and for the folks who are listening and hearing us laugh, it's because it's so wild. Like literally noise complaint, and then hearing a statement like that, it's just like, what is happening? Like, where's the maybe? How do we not know? Yes or no?
Well, and it was so wild to me how nonchalant she was. So I thought she got like secondhand info, or like he texted her like hey, I'm done. This is the end. She was standing next to him. And she's like, well, I heard like something like, I heard the gun go off, something like that. And he's snoring. And I was sitting there and I'm listening. And I'm like, that's not snoring. My trainer's like, that's not snoring.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, okay, like, let's get you help. And we're sending help as fast as we can. And it was just, it was interesting because to this day, I've never met a caller who was so just like there was no like, oh my God, my husband, it was, I think my husband, shot himself. And I was like, I wouldn't be that calm. I'd probably the caller that we all kind of shake our head at, like text you going like, I think this happened. What do I do? And you'd be like, why are you, I'm in a different city. Why are you, I can't get you help.
Oh my gosh. But it's so true because like, and I think we learn this the more we do this job, right? Is like, you just never know. And for the folks in the world out there, you just never know how people respond in these moments. Like people are like, the correct way to respond is just non-existent to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to DV victims who are like so upset and crying. And then I've talked to DV victims who are like, yeah, he's here doing the same stuff again. Or, victims of violent crimes, victims of shootings, all
kids. So you'll get, sometimes kids who are the most reliable witnesses in the most heinous crimes. Weirdest thing ever. Yeah. Makes me feel so bad that they're like so used to it or so numb to it that they're able to do that.
Yeah.
Weirdest thing.
Yeah. So, and especially with taking that like as one of your first calls, it's like,
the hardest part wasn't even the call. Okay, so I take the call, I get the info, and of course, I start asking the units like, what happened when you got there?
Yeah.
And I create the whole Dateline episode in my mind because that's
let's see your mug there. 'Tis the season.
Hold on.
It's either serial killer documentaries or Christmas movies. We either slaying or slaying. So,
so I'm doing my whole asking them what happened, and this is mind you, 90% of the time we're not going to know how something plays out, especially that early on into your career because you don't know these officers. They don't know you. They're not going to just like give you information. I got lucky because my trainer was super awesome. So she was like, I'm going to put out feelers, figure out what happened. But the worst part of this wasn't the call. It wasn't the sound of the death gargle, which is what she thought was the snoring. It was the fact that afterwards, everyone kept asking me if I was okay. And it didn't bother me. And it's not because, I'm crazy or anything. It's just I compartmentalize different than, my trainer does or, my supervisor. But like, that was more upsetting to me than the call because I was like, why am I not? Should I be not okay? Like,
no, I hear you. Yeah, for sure.
And so there was a lot of self-doubt. And then like, they had told me, if you need a minute, take a minute. And because they kept asking me that, like, I went and I took a minute, and it's like probably midnight because we were on a swing shift. And I called my dad because fireman, probably awake, and I was like, "There's something wrong with me." He's like, I mean, you got to narrow it down a little bit.
Good answer, Dad. Good answer.
And I was like, I took this call and I told him about it, and I was like, it's not like making me cry. It's not, making me nervous. And they keep asking me if I'm okay, and I'm fine. And he goes, "Oh no, that's fine." He's like, "You're just used to it." And I was like, used to it. He's like, you compartmentalize things different. You've heard stories, growing up about stuff. Like, to you, what's traumatic isn't what's going to be traumatic to the next person.
Which is true for everyone who's out there trying to get into this. It's like, the thing that makes me, jerk and tear is going to be different than Katie's thing that makes her jerk and tear. And I remember early, one of our dispatchers like poked their head in, and they're just like, yeah, like calls are weird because like when I didn't have kids, like kid calls didn't bother me. I didn't have kids. But now that I have kids, like kid calls bother me. That's what their advice to us was. And it's just, as your life progresses, your triggers are going to progress too. And what you bring into this job is going to have its own triggers as well. So if you're not crying over the thing that someone else is crying over, like, don't freak out. Don't call your dad in the middle of the night.
He was awake. He was doing it.
You are normal. And, we all feel things differently, especially in this line of work. I mean, I think I do a really good job at like forgetting calls too. Like, I'm the worst dispatcher to be like, what's that? What do you tell me like your craziest call or what? Like, because I just don't remember them. I have like a few trinkets that I remember, and a lot of those that I remember are someone else's call. That it was just like so wild that I can't forget it, but I didn't get to hear it.
I had someone bring up a call I took, I think it was like a week ago. I had no idea what they were talking about.
Right?
I took the call.
The same way. Yeah.
And not only did I take the call, but like it was right when we were moving positions. So I took the call and I dispatched it.
Oh.
But, I take and dispatch hundreds of calls a day. And this doesn't mean, I don't care. It's just the way I process is I let go. Yeah. There's certain things that do bother me. It usually has to do with like loss of power. The calls that stick out to me the most, other than that call, tend to be the open lines where I have to sit there and I just hear someone screaming as they're hurt. Because to me, the worst thing in the world is hearing someone begging you for help and you can't do anything at the time. Mind you, my units are going as fast as they can. But unless it can, bibbity bobbity boop and be there, it's not going to change the fact that someone's, being stabbed, being assaulted, being beaten, nothing's going to change that. And the fact that, they're asking you to make it better, and you're sitting there and all you have for them is, we've got help coming. You don't hang up, stay with me.
Yeah, I would say those are definitely hard, because it's that sense of helplessness again. Like, you've done all you can, you got the right address, you got as much info as you could from them, you're sending the right help, and now all you can do is kind of be a figurative hand on the back, like, we're coming, stay in there.
And it's hard, especially because, for all you know, they might have dropped the phone across the room, and so you're hearing it from far away, and maybe the suspect doesn't know they called. So if there's times where you can't talk because, like, you don't know, is this on speaker? Can he hear me? Does he know she called? Or does he know, or does she know he called, depending on what the circumstances are. And so you're sitting there and you're like, can I give those reassurances? Those are the only ones that ever really stick with me. And even those, eventually, like, I found a way to exercise them. Not really, but I'm processing still.
Yeah.
They don't go away overnight.
Yeah, they don't. And I think that it's a constant, the way we compartmentalize, the way we decompress, the way we dump, our calls, it's all different for each of us, right? Like how that looks is different for each of us. But the important part, I would say, is that you're actively trying to do it. However it is for you. Like you're saying, I'm exercising them. It's a process. Like as long as you're figuring out the process and you're like constantly working towards perfecting your process, like that's all we can really ask for, because that's going to create that longevity in this career, right? Is being able to take the tough calls, and not even like the tough big calls, like just the constant calls, right? We're constantly hearing trauma. We're constantly listening to folks who are having a terrible day, whose partner is harming them, who a stranger is harming them, or, we have to transfer someone over who's having a medical emergency and their love of their life is no longer breathing,
Or just someone who's having a mental health episode and they've lost their grasp on reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be heartbreaking in and of itself, because you've got these people who they don't see their illness the same way because they're in it.
Yeah.
Those are always, you'll get one or two who, are just calling to say hi.
Yeah. There's some I miss. There's some I miss talking to.
I've got one that calls in the regular, and he's got a very distinct voice. And
I think it's who I miss.
Hello. And then he like says our department. And
I miss. Yeah.
He starts his spiel, because he has a very set dialogue that he goes through every time he calls. Mm. And I've gotten him so many times that I always stop and I say his name and I say, "Honey, have you eaten today? Are you near our local shelter? Are you staying warm?" And he always goes, "Oh, you always ask me." Yes, and like tells me he ate, tells me he, if he's staying warm, and then he tells me, never mind, just keep yourself safe and I'll talk to you later. Mm-hmm. Calls back 10 minutes later because he forgets the conversation. But it's funny because like I have friends who are on patrol who are in the area that he camps in, and they've heard him call and they're like, how did you get him to stop his spiel? And I was like, it catches him off guard, and sometimes they just need that little like bit of caring. But it's sad because literally 10 minutes later he forgets that he had that little bit of caring. Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah, it's you get all sorts of different types of trauma, whether it's inner stuff that no one can see but you can hear. Mm-hmm. Ugh.
Yeah, and even those little ones build up, and you just got to find a way to, peer support, therapy,
talk to your friends.
Talk to your friends.
Maybe not all your friends, because some people who may not be in it do not necessarily understand sometimes, and they can be a little judgmental. Mm-hmm. And it's not because they don't love you.
Yeah,
it's because they haven't experienced the same things. Yeah. But talk to your friends you work with.
Yes,
it's important to have a village. Mm-hmm. I still call Ashley.
Yes, we do.
we're in different villages now, but I still call her. I'm like, okay, mm-hmm. So I did thing.
Yeah, sometimes you need someone to just talk to about the stuff. And I would also say it's important to have friends outside of this line of work. Someone who is not going to just want to trauma dump with you right after your 12-hour shift. I think that's also important as well, is having those groups of people who are outside, and that you can get away from this first responder culture, because it can be consuming, right? Being in this line of work, always worried about calls. When I left my previous agency and you guys had a big incident happen, like there's FOMO there. There's like, oh my gosh, like I wasn't there with them for this big thing. And, so it's really nice to step away from it as well, because you can get caught up in all the wanting to be in every call, wanting to know every outcome, trying to get into everybody else's calls because it's interesting, right? Like,
Yeah.
First responder, emergency service, it's all interesting, but it can become a full-time gig where it doesn't need to be, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I know for me that was always a hard thing because I came from a job where, bartending, partying is a part of the lifestyle. I was lucky in the fact that like I was always on the outskirts of it because I'm an introvert.
I couldn't tell.
It's funny because I'm red when we take the personality color test. I bright red, but
red brown. Brown was one, right? I think it was red brown. Brown.
I was like red blue. I was red something. I remember I was red. But for someone who's supposed to be like so outgoing and like, look at me. I don't like crowds. I don't like strangers. Like every time my friends are like, "Hey, let's go dancing," I'm like, "Ooh, that's a lot of people that I don't know that I'm have to socialize with." And especially because of the type of job I was in, it's a lot of people who might have different lifestyle choices that aren't necessarily looked upon well with the type of job I do now. And so I did have to let go of a lot of those friends. And it wasn't like, oh, screw you, kick rocks. It was more of just natural distancing starts to happen.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a big struggle because I went from like, I had this huge group of friends to like, it was dwindling down and it became almost solely my friends at work. And even now I have one of my best friends used to work with me and he no longer does. And when we talk, I have to like pull myself back because like I'll start just like trauma dumping about work. And I'm like, wait a second. Care. And mind you, he doesn't mind because he's like, hey, get it out. We do not need you losing your marbles.
Yeah.
Like that would be a scary day. But it's also not fair to him because like I don't need to be constantly trauma dumping on him. And so we've, he's been helping me like figure out how to like switch it off.
Valid. Still work in progress, but
I work like I'm supposed to work 3 to 4 days a week. I work almost like 5 days a week. So it's a little bit hard when you're working, 70 hours a week. And it's just a lot.
Yeah. Seriously. A lot of calls, a lot of time. I mean, it really is a commitment, right? Like this line of work. It really is it's one of those things where, when you talked about people who are interested in getting into this line of work, it's like there will be times like you are experiencing now where there's no one else to do the job, so guess who gets to do it, And it's like, it's my day off. It doesn't matter. Like someone has to answer 911. You're being forced in and, your number's up. It's your day. And for some people, like that's a hard no. Some people are like, I'm not going to be mandated to work on my day off. It's not fair, XYZ. But that is a reality of this line of work. So if you are considering, getting into dispatch, getting into any first responder service, really, you could be put in a position where you're being mandated to work on your days off, and it sucks. It sucks to come into work when you're
not guaranteed. Yeah. You're not going to get holidays off. Just lose any idea like that you think you have about holidays. And I've seen it happen to a couple of friends who like they knew what the job was. They understand. They thought they understand, and then it actually happens where they can't get that holiday off, and it hits them differently. And it's hard to see that little piece of them die because they're like, I thought I could do this, and they realize like in reality, like you literally do not get the day off on a holiday. They go to the smallest amount of staffing at most departments that I'm aware of so that they can try. But even then, unless you have like 20 years in, you're probably not going to get the day off.
Yeah.
And it's hard, especially for those, with kids. Like I'm lucky. Like I got a cat. She's
Preach.
cool, but like she do her own thing. So I don't mind working holidays. Does it stink? Sure. Do I turn it into a party? Totally. We're gonna have a really good potluck.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not a big deal to get off work and then just like toot on over to where my family is, join them for like 2 hours, and then go home and sleep.
Yeah.
It's harder for those who have children or who have set expectations of what their holiday looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to be able to have that expectation met.
Yeah. And if you're going into this thinking like, oh, they're going to give me all the stuff and then their scheduling is going to change for me, it's not going to happen.
No. If anyone makes you that promise, run.
Yeah. Right.
Because they are trying to like bait and switch you, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder then what else are they bait and switching about? Like what's your pay really going to look like?
Right. Gee. All right. So as we come to a close, the question that I ask everybody who dares to come on this show with me, you got voluntold, so I appreciate you. What advice would you give someone who's considering a career in dispatch?
Be honest with yourself about your boundaries.
Mm.
In dispatch, you can have very few. If you are someone who is needing specific things, like you can't stay up at night, or you can't handle other people's emotional dumping. Like if your friend or family member unloading on you is too much, this may not be for you. Understand what your boundaries are, understand what your limits are. Do as many sit-alongs as you can during your hiring process, and be honest with yourself. They glamorize this job a lot. We are underpaid. We are underappreciated. And we are overworked. But we make a huge difference. And for a lot of us, I can only speak for myself. I know Ashley and I've talked about this a couple times. It's not about the praise, the money, or the amount of free time we get. It's about the being able to give back, the being able to help. And if that's not enough for you, that's okay. But this might not be the correct path, because it's going to get rough. There's going to be more rough days than there are going to be smooth sailing days. So look in on yourself. Look and do as much research as you can. Listen to calls. Be prepared. And if it's not for you, even if it's 2 weeks in, 2 years in, it's okay. At any point in time, you can say, hey, man, I hit my limit. I was not expecting to feel this way, or, that came out of the blue. Don't put yourself in harm's way for this job. Look after yourself.
So Drew, I'm going to just echo that one more time. If you get into this line of work, and at whatever point you figure out it's not for you, throw in the towel and know it is okay. Because yes, we need more dispatchers, but we need more folks being happy and thriving in the work they are doing. And if for some reason, whatever reason it being, either the calls are tough, the scheduling sucks, whatever it is, it's not hitting for you, bow out and know that me and Caity support you. We believe in people understanding and setting their own boundaries. And if this ends up not being the right field and work environment for you, it's okay to back out of it 1,000%.
There's other parts of the department that may need you still. There's records. There's, admin. There's other things you can do if you're so set on being part of a police or fire department. If you decide to tap out, talk to them about checking those out too. Nothing wrong with that. There's no bad part of a department. There's no bad part of a department.
It is true. We need all the help we can get in every avenue of the work we are doing, right? So with that, Caity, thank you so much for jumping on with me. I miss you. I miss our teaching sessions, our rants at work. You know,
our beach hut.
Our what?
Our beach hut. Our
beach hut, yeah. I'm all the things. I miss you guys out there so much. But I do appreciate you jumping on with me. I'm going to kick you out respectively, and I'll be right back with you. All right, everybody. That was another great episode here at Let's Talk Dispatch. Again, Caity, thank you so much for coming on with me. It's always refreshing talking and chatting with folks who you've been through it with and continue to go through it with. So again, thank you so much. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, and until next time, stay raspy, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at The Raspy Dispatcher, follow us on Instagram, and check out Let's Talk Dispatch anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'll see you next time, and stay raspy.